to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nicole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. It is Wednesday, November 1st. My name is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad in the street, and you are now getting high at 9, but also high noon on the East Coast. Today is many days to many people. In fact, maybe more than we've ever had on the show. It's Prime Meridian Day, All Saints Day, Autistic Speaking Day, National Biologic Coordinators Day, World Vegan Day, National Cinnamon Day, National Calzone Day, National Brush Day, National Deep Fried Clams Day, National Cook for Your Pets Day for Nicole West, National Family Literacy Day, National Authors Day, National Vinegar Day, for all of y'all out there that like to keep things tart. Please remember to like and share, and also subscribe to us on all social media platforms. We're live on weekdays on YouTube and Twitch, audio only on Clubhouse. And if you're in Clubhouse, you can also join the conversation by raising your hand if you have a brief comment on the story presented. We'll be getting things rolling in just a minute here, but first, a message from the sponsors.
At True Classic OG, we live by one motto: stay true. We stay true to our legacy cut of True OG that's always fresh, piney, gassy, and delicious. We represent the spirit, hustle, and diversity of our great city of angels. And we stay true to the spirit of this plant, doing everything in-house to ensure that you get the highest quality and consistency with every batch. And that's what's made us LA's favorite OG. True Classic OG. Stay true, Los Angeles.
Stay true, everybody. I know I always stay true. Coming up first, it's the longest continuously operating retailer in the industry, also known in certain circles as Gucci Blanco, White Gucci, Kaiser Brose, the highest Republican. And if you're in West Hollywood considering cannabis tourism, you can always call him El Presidente. You know who it is. It is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Jason Beck. What do you got for us today, my man? Be Tuesday and first day of the month. What you got, man?
Oh, yeah. Good morning, Rico. Hope everyone is having a fabulous, was it Tuesday? That's right. It's Tuesday. Well, you know what? I normally don't cover medical stories, but today I really like this medical story because it just reiterates one of the facts that I try to tell people all the time, that smoking cannabis is the superior method to cannabis treatment. And this medical data backs up my statements. So for all you naysayers, you guys better just put your seatbelts on, because here we go. Because smoking marijuana is more effective than CBD extracts for back pain. One of the reasons many medical marijuana users prefer edibles over smoking is that they are perceived as healthier. Marijuana smoke contains many of the same chemicals and carcinogens as cigarette smoke, but not a whole lot of them, and could have harmful effects on people with respiratory or cardiovascular problems. But a small new study conducted in Israel found that smoking marijuana is better than ingesting it. That's right. Let me repeat that. A new study conducted in Israel found that smoking marijuana is better than ingesting it, at least when it comes to treating chronic lower back pain. Research enrolled 24 adults with MRI or CT scans that showed evidence of disc herniation or spinal stenosis and had them try 2 different types of cannabis treatment. The first was a cannabis extract rich in cannabidiol, CBD, which was taken sublingually under the tongue daily for 10 months. After a month of no treatment, the treatment group smoked cannabis flowers rich in THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, up to 4 times a day for 12 months. Participants were allowed to take pain medication as needed, including oxycodone and acetaminophen. The study findings published in the Rambam Miyamadi's medical journal showed there was little to no improvement in back pain when participants took the extract, but significant improvement when they smoked cannabis. The use of analgesic drugs also dropped significantly while smoking. Notably, 3 patients dropped out of the extract phase of the study because it wasn't helping them, but then returned to participate during the smoking phase. The current study is the first to our knowledge to indicate that THC-rich smoke therapy is more advantageous in ameliorating LBP, lower back pain, than low THC CBD-rich sublingual extracts. Despite the small number of patients, our data indicated that the THC-rich smoke therapy is helping in mitigation, LBP researchers reported. The most commonly reported adverse events during the study were nausea, dizziness, drowsiness, and fatigue during the extract phase. Sore throat and drowsiness were reported during the smoking phase, and all of the adverse symptoms disappeared after a dose tolerance was reached. Most of the adverse effects were in female patients, and they say a 2019 study of medical marijuana users also found that smoking cannabis provided more pain relief than ingesting it. Over 3,300 people logged their symptoms on a mobile app while using a variety of cannabis products, including dried flower, edibles, tinctures, and ointments. Smoking the dried flower proved more pain relief than any other cannabis product, regardless of the amount of THC. Another problem with the CBD edibles is that they are frequently mislabeled. A recent study of 80 CBD oils found that only 43 had concentrations of cannabinoids that were within 10% of their label claims, an accuracy rate of just 54%. Well, as you guys can probably tell, I love this study and I love this news, but I'm also wondering if the tinctures that they were using were full spectrum or if they were just hemp-derived snake oil bullshit. But nonetheless, I digress. This is Jason Beck reporting for High at 9 News.
All right, so I have to ask you, Jason, you heard that this study is the difference between THC smoke and CBD concentrate. That's literally
There's still
like,
CBD flower.
No, bro, but it's different. It's like saying like people preferred apples to fucking tomatoes.
I don't believe that. I don't buy that.
No, because if you were saying THC concentrate to THC smoke side by side, or THC edible to THC side by side, you were saying CBD, so one cannabinoid. I'm not disagreeing with you on the fact that, yes, THC inhaled, which goes directly to your lungs, which will happen faster, right? When you have to digest something, the cannabinoids have to be broken down. So you're looking at like lengths of time that it has to get there. So if you had to say, I'm in back pain right now, I need it to go away, 100,000 million jillion % would say smoking something or inhaling something right now is going to get you that relief faster. But if the conversation was THC smoke to THC edibles at overall length of time results, fine. But the guy that dropped out, or the people that dropped out, I don't know if it was a guy or a girl, whoever dropped out saying that it didn't work because CBD alone, we go over this all the time. Like, you can't isolate that cannabinoid and get the effect that you're hoping for.
I know.
But in the same breath, Jason, smoking anything, lighting anything on fire, and inhaling carcinogens, and you're wrong. There's actually more tar in cannabis and more tar remaining in our lungs from cannabis than tobacco. Yes,
I'm not buying that.
It's 100% true. There's so much research and data that goes into that. But in that same breath, when you're saying if you smoked THC over CBD, yes, I would say that 100%. Yes, if you're smoking THC to get the back pain relief and you smoke CBD all by its CBD for the back pain relief. But to say that a CBD edible is not as effective as a THC smoke, like, that's not even a comparison. Like, I do grasp what you're saying, and yes, I do think that smoking gets to it faster, but like,
smoking is better than edibles. That's all I'm saying. It's better than tinctures. It's better than all those dumbass delivery methods that people try to perpetuate as more
smoking is
healthier.
not. No, stop.
before-
Smoking. Do
smoke
not
before
tell
like
people
the
that
next
smoking is better. Rob.
Yeah,
Smoking is better.
No.
It is what
Disclaimer.
it is.
Disclaimer: this is
No.
a subjective opinion of Jason
Yeah,
Beck.
This is
Super
my
subjective.
opinion. 100%. This is my opinion.
Definitely
And-
not objectively supported by
And
fact.
smoking
No,
is better.
But
weed smokers inhale and hold their shit in their lungs. And so there's what's called bong lung that people are starting to realize, doctors are starting to realize, because we like, and we hold those rips in, it's actually causing an issue where our lungs are stretching out and we're not able to actually inhale the amount of air that the lung is capacity.
So what you're saying is that when you smoke, you shouldn't hold your smoke in. You should just inhale and exhale and breathe normally.
Absolutely.
And speaking on the comment, Nicole, that you dropped about cannabis having a much higher tar content than tobacco, shout out Moose Labs real quick. Feel free to sponsor me. I use your products and I buy them for my friends. As you can see, Nicole's using one that I purchased for her, and takes away all that tar and gets you all the goodness of the smoke inside.
We do have Dr. Mary with us from Clubhouse. Dr. Mary, do you have a brief comment on this?
Yeah, Nicole makes a good point about the pressure damage that can occur to the lungs with inhaling and holding the smoke. And I think that's just a it's a historical thing, because so many people had to smoke poor, and I call it smoking poor, where you were never able to access cannabis. You never knew where your next dose was going to come from. So you just really tried to hold in the smoke as long as possible to allow all those molecules to drop out of the inhalation and be effective for you. But there's been 2 good studies now that show that all that holding your breath does is actually damage the lungs, and it doesn't really improve the amount of THC you get out of the product. So you should do a normal inhalation and a normal exhalation. If you cough, you can exhale a little slower to try to reduce the coughing. I just don't know about the tar in cannabis, and I'd really like to go back and look at those studies, because the problem is it's always just so hard to compare cigarettes to cannabis, because most cannabis smokers are doing 1 or 2 or maybe 6 inhalations a day, and tobacco smokers are inhaling 200 times a day. So right. If they are getting, more tar per inhalation, but their inhalation numbers are so much lower, then is cannabis really just as damaging to the lungs? Because
I smoke as much as a cigarette smoker.
Data,
Dr. Mary, I smoke just as much weed as a cigarette smoker. Jason probably smokes more weed than the average cigarette smoker. And I'm not trying to like bust you out, J-Beck, but like we're talking about like full joints that he smokes every day. He probably smokes a full pack of cigarettes worth of joints every day.
And my cardio game is on point.
Okay, I have a question, and this is more for maybe Dr. Mary, because I'm very torn on this study, because like Nicole says, I mean, this is comparing apples to oranges. I think
of course you are, Gretchen. You're
Simmer
conditioned
down.
to
Let me finish my point,
edibles
mister.
and
I
tinctures.
just like to pick studies and make my points. Simmer down.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you.
My question would be, though, for Dr. Mary, would you consider this study, when this will help you out, Jason Beck? So pipe down. Would this study be valid for people who don't understand cannabis? To point this out to someone who's like, oh, CBD is the way we should be going, and then to prove to people, no, THC is what you need for pain relief. Would this thing? I think this study is garbage, but I don't know. Would do you see this as a valid study, Dr. Mary?
Well,
I'm asking Dr. Mary, not you, Jason.
I think it's helpful to Jason. You poor baby.
I know they always want to beat me up because I speak the truth.
Oh my God.
Well, I mean, there's different strokes for different folks. I mean, some people take an aspirin and some people take a Tylenol, and I have people telling me that Tylenol never works and aspirin is the only thing that works for their pain. And so, to look at a larger population and do comparisons is valuable, because because back pain is a different animal. It's a chronic pain thing. It's generally not an acute pain. It's a pain that people deal with for a long time, and that changes the ascending pathways in the spinal cord. It changes the way the brain handles it, because you're constantly getting this message that you're in trouble and you need to hurry and change something because your body's producing pain. So it messes with your cortisone. It causes a lot of systematic problems. So I actually would have thought that CBD could have been just as powerful as THC, but I think THC provides a bit of dissociation that you don't get with THC. It allows you to take your mind off the pain a little bit more. And I think it is more powerful at the pain receptor level, both in the periphery and in the brain.
I've said that for a long time, Dr. Mary.
Sourced this story from the fake news digest this morning.
Well, Dr. Mary, I've always said that because I am someone that does suffer from chronic back pain and chronic all kinds of other pain, and I do believe that cannabis stops you mentally from focusing on the pain, so then that way you're not focused on it and still able to operate in a normal capacity without the constant thought of the pain reminiscing.
Chronic is good for your back.
I mean, the study I would like to see is edible versus smoking, because I do still think smoking is the best delivery system for most people, but a lot of people are they're just gonna feel safer with a gummy bear.
That's right. Smoking for the win, Dr. Mary. I got medical advice soundbite right there, acknowledging that smoking weed is better than every other delivery system.
We don't give medical advice on our show ever.
Yes.
Who's up next?
Oh yeah, coming up next, she's a cannabis business consultant, an industry veteran, a bullshit buster, but can't bullshit my shit. That's right, a general self-proclaimed overall data bitch with over 13 years in the regulated market, but with deep roots in the legacy industry as well. So much legacy roots that she did some time for a cannabis crime. Coming up next is none other than the one and only Nicole West.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jason, for a lovely introduction. My headline today is coming out of the island now, and it's something that we've been discussing quite often, and I think it kind of is a good parlay in this for the next conversation. Does Delta 10 show up on a drug test? And we have been asking this for a while, so it's super interesting. So will you fail a drug test after using Delta 8 THC? Well, Delta 8 THC is one of the earliest cannabinoid products discovered by scientists. While most reviews claim that the effects of consuming Delta 8 usually surpass prescription drugs, no scientific data supports these claims. Will you test positive after you consume Delta 8? Yes. Most standard drug tests do not identify the specificity of the THC compound in your sample. Instead, these tests only detect THC COOH metabolite produced in your body after breaking it down, and these hemp-based cannabinoids all convert to that. Your body needs to break down these cannabinoids to flush them out of your system. Once your body has a high amount of these metabolites, you will test positive. What makes Delta 8 so enticing is the closely related chemical compound it has with THC Delta 9. Will you record a positive test after using THC Delta 10? Most cannabis users report Delta 10 is a less potent. However, Delta 10 is still appearing on your drug test. Like other THC products, Delta 10 contains THC metabolites that flag the drug test, and once you still have these metabolites in your system. Urine tests, blood tests, hair follicle tests, and even saliva tests will flag your drug test with THC Delta 10. Though Delta 10 and Delta 8 have significant differences to make the government regulate them separately, they are still related, and in an imperfect method like a drug test will always flag this compound. Delta 8 and Delta 10 can also cause you to lose your job, since most drug tests will pick it up. Since most employers use urine for their employees, you could lose your job if you have the substance or substantial amounts of Delta 10 or Delta 8 in your system. What are the possible drug tests that one could take? This is an interesting question. I didn't realize there were so many variables as far as the drug tests that employers were giving these days. I definitely knew like government ones would go deeper into the hair and the saliva, but there's definitely a comprehensive test that's being issued now that is saliva, urine, and hair. How long does Delta 10 last in your body? So apparently Delta 10 does metabolize and actually get out of your system a little bit quicker. It says that Delta 10 takes about half as long to get out of your system as it takes for Delta 9. And will HHC make you fail a drug test? That was another conversation that we were having, which I thought was super interesting. The knowledge of HHC is still shallow, and therefore many drug tests and not on many drug test radars. However, a jury will still be looking out for this one, so better safe than sorry. HHC is more chemically distinct from THC, unlike Delta 8, Delta 9, or Delta 10. HHC forms an extra hydrogen molecule and adds Delta 9 THC. hence the difference in the metabolites when it breaks down into a new compound. And then one question that we were talking about recently in regards to HHC is being made the same way that Delta 8 is being made. They're extracting the raw hemp, they're using the CBD product, they're isolating it into a powder form, and then the compound goes through an acid conversion process. And then there is just a little bit of questions about THCO. THCO, it will test on most drug tests. It will test for sure on a saliva test. The hair test, they were not able to give us the proper research for that to be able to answer yes or no. And then there's some stuff about here on how to pass a test. And I have no interest in teaching you guys that. You guys want to know. The internet is a beautiful place. But that's super interesting information. I thought that everybody deserves to know. Delta 10 and Delta 8 will fail your drug test. So if you are in a state that will test you, or you're in a city, or your job, cannabis is still illegal, just be conscious that just because Delta 8 and Delta 10 seem to be being sold at your gas station does not mean that it won't make you fail a drug test and lose your job. And in some places, people are losing their children. So be cautious out there. And I'm Nicole West, getting high at 9 with y'all.
Nicole, do those products have any type of warning labels on them that denote that they could cause you to fail a drug test?
No, I mean, there's no requirements. That's the thing. Like that there is no regulation behind.
Where's
Delta
all the
8,
ambulance
10,
chaser and lawyers
HHC.
for that one?
Bro, how about, I'm like, literally, my mind is being blown. I've been thinking about this. Prop 65 in California, okay? The Clean Air and Water Drinking Act requires you to label any package that has anything that the state of California considers to be carcinogenic, okay, or have birth defect issues. And beta-myrcene, which is a terpene, Delta 9, which it won't have that, THC Delta 9, hopefully, and then marijuana smoke. So smoking something, if you light it on fire, it requires, but beta-myrcene is a very interesting cannabinoid conversation to have, that technically you have to label that it might cause cancer if it has this, or not cannabinoid, this terpene in it. So if they're not properly labeling, if hemp companies aren't properly labeling for Prop 65, which a lot of them aren't necessarily aware that they should, they could be getting ambulance chaser lawyers coming after them left and right, because Prop 65 is essentially designed for personal injury lawyers, right? Personal injury. Like if I got hurt because of using a product and I go to the product and it doesn't tell me that it could give me cancer and I got cancer, I can sue them on a personal injury case. And so the idea that Prop 65 is not being adhered to in California, I think, is my curious part about the warnings. But there is nothing required of any of those products in any state on any level, because they're not regulated.
I'm about to get those warnings on everything in California, pretty much.
Yes. Everything causes cancer in California, bro.
Yeah, every building I walk into has a Prop 65 warning on it.
Yes, has to.
Just living in California causes cancer.
I'm going to get real nerdy with it real quick, and I'm hoping that maybe one of the doctors might be able to comment on this in the audience. But so we were talking about if HHC can show up on a drug test, which for those who need the education on what HHC is, it's basically THC that's been hydrogenated. That's what the first H stands for, hydrogenated hexa. And so shout out to Dr. Mark Scaldione and Chris Barone for inventing HHC and being the first to actually use a hydrogenation machine to hydrogenate THC. One of the most badass things to happen in cannabis science in the past 2 or 3 years. But I do have to ask this. I know that methylating compounds make it so they break down slower in the liver, but at the end of the day, they still end up being processed like the compound that was originally, before it was originally methylated. So if it's the same, could it be the same thing for hydrogenated cannabinoids? Could it slow down that process and make it so it lasts longer in the body and then still then show on a drug test? Any doctors want to talk about that? And also, definitely, like I said, Nicole, if you need advice on how to pass a drug test, go to the internet. If you have a hair drug test, you're fucked.
Wizinator.
Shave your head. Learn something from Britney Spears.
Make sure the shade is correct.
All right. Well, oh my God, the shade of the
shade and
what a great way to segue. Hold on. What a great way
peace,
for me to segue into Rico's head. Holy
shade.
Shit. Oh my God. All right. Well, thank you guys for entertaining that story. Definitely interested. And if any of the doctors did have information on that, we want to know, and we're continuously wanting to learn more and understand more about every cannabinoid as it comes out. But up next, we have Rico Lamitte. Rico Lamitte is the dope dad on the street. He is known for speaking his mind in front of people at TEDx conferences, on this stage, around the world. And when his daughter likes to talk back to him, he shuts the fuck up. What do we have today, Rico?
It's so true, though. All right, so it's funny. All right, so thank you, Nicole. My story today, my headline today is from MJ Moment by Kyle Yeager. Legal marijuana access tied to lower risk of lung injuries from contaminated vapes, study indicates. You want to save children without hopping on to QAnon conspiracy theories? Legalize weed. A new joint study conducted by Johns Hopkins, NYU, and the American Heart Association adds to the ever-increasing body of research pointing to access to legal and regulated cannabis served as a protective purpose for people who ignored the warnings during the 2019 vape crisis. The conclusions to the study were published this month and focused on the prevalence of marijuana vaping, cases of e-cigarettes or vaping product use associated lung injury, which is e-valley, and cannabis laws in 13 states. The study revealed while more people reported vaping cannabis products in legal states for medical and recreational use, the prevalence did not translate into a greater percentage of e-valley case burdens compared to non-legal states. The research took data from 4 prohibition states, 7 medical cannabis states, and 2 adult use, and found that state-level cannabis vaping prevalence was not positively associated with e-valley caseload, even after accounting for state cannabis policies. In fact, there was an inverse association between state cannabis vaping prevalence and e-valley case burden. Rough translation, legal states had higher levels of weed vaping, and they saw lower cases of lung injuries. The authors went on to note e-valley crisis dropped off significantly following increased public education and stepped up regulatory enforcement efforts against vaping manufacturers, and also the quick response to reports on illegal vape additives like vitamin E acetate. I do have to say my good friends over at CannaSafe reported on vitamin E acetate present in the booth carts in illegal markets a good 3 months before CNN did. May they rest in peace. Although more data and research is always welcome and better ammo for us to hammer prohibitionist lawmakers and citizens on, I really don't think it's rocket science. People like weed. People want weed. Want to stop folks from getting sick? Get people access to clean meds. Legalize the shit, and if you don't, deschedule or bust, as Nicole West would say. My name is Rico Lamitte, dopest dad on the street, and I'd love to hear what the rest of y'all think about this one.
So all I want to say is thank you. Finally, like Massachusetts, like we all remember what happened a couple years ago in Massachusetts and how they went like balls to the wall, insane, with just like recall every single fucking vape on the market. We're done. No vapes. And now we have this finally to be like, oh, it was the trappers screwing everything up for everybody here.
It was Vapegate.
Well, I appreciate Johns Hopkins and these guys weighing in, and I would love for this headline to be correct. They're wrong. If you go back, and this is not a conspiracy theory, CDC stopped testing for e-valley like 3 months into COVID because it had the same damn symptoms. So the CDC's data is garbage. So to pretend that e-valley does not exist anymore is bullshit. Just saying.
I also still have like a lot of thoughts on the long-term effects on vaping versus the short-term effects on vaping, right? Like we haven't gotten there yet. But I'm very curious to see without the regulation that we have on the metals and the plastics that are going into these items, like we've talked about before, the metals and the plastics are some of the most toxic pieces. And then you're just fucking heating it up. And then, one of the things is people get the tank, right? And you have what's called a 510 thread, which is the kind of universal connector piece. Yeah. But you can get these fucking batteries that are like supercharged. And, you see the vape people that are just blowing these fucking clouds. Well,
the super mod.
Right. The tank is not designed for what you've like juiced your fucking hot rod of a vape battery up to be, and you just put that shit on top of a child's fucking bed car, you
Yeah,
know, and you're like,
it's like putting a Ferrari V12 on a Ford Fiesta. You know what I'm saying? Like,
literally,
shit ain't gonna.
literally.
Your
And so
suspension is gonna
the
be
metals and the
fucking shot.
plastics that you might not have even noticed tasting weird or converting are getting even hotter than they standardly would on the shitty little throwaway batteries, right? And so like I think there's so many variables into vapes besides just
also the especially in the trap market, there was really a reduction in the quality of the hardware, because I know that out in China there was one factory that would collect all this aluminum and different metal that was all the metal that they would recycle, and they started making cartridges out of all of that metal because it was
crazy.
cheaper.
They got that shit from America. They recycled all that shit
our
from America.
recycles.
I mean,
we sent our trash
there's
to
another
them and
reason.
asked them to make us a smoking device, and we gratefully got it back because it was cheaper than anything we could get made here in this country, and we gratefully sold it to our customers who either died of bad vapes or COVID. We don't know.
We're also
Jury's
watching.
out.
We're also watching the price gouging happening in every evolved market right now. So even though it was the trap market then, and at the time the regulated market, everyone was dropping the fucking jar inside a box, inside a bag with like a butler, but now they're coming in a Mylar bag. That variable, that change in the cost, everyone's cost cutting. How soon before we're worried about that same problem in the regulated market too, though, because there isn't any regulation on the metals and the plastics that they're allowed to use.
To all trappers,
the matter is like industrial recycling is bad for the environment. Period.
Well, real quick, to all the trappers and to all the regulated brands out there, if you're paying less than $2 for a cartridge, you're paying for something that's most likely going to hurt your end user.
Well, and I totally agree with you. I do not want to jump all over vape, because I do think vape is a viable consumption method. I do work with various vape companies, and if you're using proper materials, spending more than 6 cents to make a fucking cartridge, there are ways. And if you are heating them to the proper temperatures, different metals and the different materials all call for different temps, but
and a properly regulated battery.
Yes. I mean, there are ways to do vape correctly that the public is just not educated on.
Well, thank you all for that conversation. Rico, that was a very spicy topic. And I think that that'll be continuing as the vape market continues to grow. And I think as we get more research, right, we're going to see more shit come out and find out, was it the vitamin E acetate or is the plastic melting and you're inhaling that too?
Or even as more fucktards do more fucktard shit.
Was the FDA behind all that shit? Because right when the fucking vape crisis went down, they approved 2 Philip Morris fucking vapes.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm going to skip to our disclaimer after that one. The thoughts and opinions general shade thrown on the High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of any other speaker or its followers. The statements made do not constitute legal or accounting advice, and our speakers make no representation regarding the legal status of any substance in a country, area, territory, or its authorities. The views expressed in this room do not establish fiduciary relationships. Our sponsors do not imply any constitute any endorsement by us, expression of any opinion whatsoever, any speaker, or any part of anyone on stage. If you're an easily offended person, the show is probably not for you. Also, it's probably time to smoke some more weed.
Flying into LAX and you want to taste some of the best weed in the world, then stop by LAXCC, the closest dispensary to LAX. Located at 8332 Lincoln Boulevard and open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Always make LAXCC your first stop when you touch down in LA and score like a winner. And don't forget to tell them I sent you and mention you'd like to get High at 9 for 10% off your full order.
You want to tell me that's not tar, J-Beck? You literally just hopped up like
tar.
a ball of tar. We all heard it.
That was definitely not tar. That is fake news.
If you ask
that is the fakest news I've heard all day. Yes.
I mean, we heard the tar.
I mean, you didn't hear any tar.
Buddy.
What sound does tar make? First of all,
that sound. No,
bro. That is not. That's the sound of my capillaries dancing.
Capillary.
Yes. That's what that sounds like. That is capillaries dancing.
Wow.
They're cutting a rug down there. You know what I'm saying? Getting it in.
All right. So she's well known in DC circles for cooking up excellence and baking delicious treats, but don't you dare get it twisted. She's still a redheaded conservative with proven long-form Mayflower roots and has really come to be a heel and a thorn in Jason's side. And I love that kind of Republican on Republican. Coming to stage next is the founder of Panoptic Strategies and our very own Washington insider, Gretchen Gailey. What you got for us today?
Good afternoon. My headline is coming from Marijuana Moment, and it's about my favorite man on the Hill, Chucky. Schumer says Congress is very close to passing marijuana banking and expungements bill after work with a bunch of Republicans. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says Congress is getting very close to introducing and passing a marijuana bill with provisions covering banking access for legal businesses and expungements of past convictions, citing progress he's made in discussions with a bunch of Republican senators. During a debate with his Republican re-election opponent, Joe Pinion, on Sunday, Schumer was asked about a separate, broader cannabis legalization bill he filed this year and whether he felt it would make more sense to first promote more research into marijuana before ending prohibition. While the top senator said that research is very, very important, he pointed out that many states have approved legalization of cannabis, and so the policy is already upon us. But we are getting very close, Schumer said in the debate. I am working in a bipartisan way with Democrats and Republicans to take the Safe Banking Act, which allows financial institutions to involve themselves in cannabis companies and lend money to them, but it also does some things for justice, such as expunging a record. He gave the example of a 15-year-old busted over a small amount of marijuana who was ultimately sentenced harshly in a manner that would be consistent with possessing and selling heroin and whose life was ruined. So expunging the records is important, and we're getting closer. We may be able to get something done rather than sooner. I'm working with a bunch of Republican senators, a bunch of Democratic senators to get something passed. What the senator is talking about is the much anticipated Safe Plus package, which is expected to build upon a standalone cannabis banking measure that's passed the House in some form 7 times now, but has stalled in the Senate under both Democratic and Republican control. The plan, according to several lawmakers, is to file the package of modest marijuana reform sometime during the lame duck session following next week's midterm elections, pass it through both chambers, and send it to the president's desk before the end of the current Congress. Meanwhile, Pinion, the Republican challenger, was asked for his opinion on ending federal cannabis prohibition at the debate and started by saying that we need to deal with the fact that we're not talking about your mom and dad's dope. We're talking about THC levels that have been off the charts. I think you bring up a good point, the notion that we release it on the citizenry and the federal level before we've actually done the due diligence seems reckless and irresponsible. Just my thoughts. He then made a pivot to the opioid overdose crisis, suggesting there's a prevalence of fentanyl-laced cannabis, and saying we now have people that are trying to smoke marijuana and are going to drop dead. There are unintended consequences. It's a thread that runneth between all of this, from the border crisis to even the conversation about marijuana, because Chuck Schumer has not taken the business of securing our border and people are dying. And so I think in the event that we're going to go down this path at the federal level, we should do so in a manner that recognizes these decisions have dire consequences and that people are actually dying in some cases because of them. Now, the Safe Banking Plus bill that Schumer is working to finalize with bipartisan and bicameral input is not expected to include language that would federally legalize marijuana. However, last month, the House sponsor of a marijuana banking bill said that he recently spoke with the majority leader at an event at the White House and discussed the need to enact the bipartisan reform this session. Representative Ed Perlmutter said he's impressed upon the leader the importance of his Safe Banking Act, and Schumer assured him that the chamber is working on it and is going to get going on the reform. Lawmakers have signaled that Safe Plus legislation will contain protections for banks that work with state legal marijuana businesses, as well as other modest proposals to provide medical cannabis access for military veterans and promote research and more. I'm glad that this came up in the debate. I wish that Chuck had a better grasp upon the legislation so he could have argued back with this idiot about the whole legalization movement and how it's coming about. I really think Chuck is just in it for himself. I don't think he has the best interest of cannabis at heart whatsoever. And I think I'm hopeful that safe banking is going to pass under him, but I guarantee you if it does, Chuck will be taking all the credit. This is Gretchen for High at 9 News.
Well, yes, you already know he's going to take all the credit for sure. Yeah. That's already a no-brainer. Yeah. But
if you saw if there's any response that gives you an idea of who safe banking will most be beneficial for. Just look at the stocks yesterday and look at the MSO gang shooting through the fucking roof. Big money, big deep pocketed cannabis is going to benefit quickly from that shit. And
all
Chuck
right,
Schumer
here comes Rico Lamitte with some goof news. The MSOs are already getting around this bullshit. I don't know why everyone keeps thinking that they're going to.
Exactly. MSOs already have banking.
I'm just saying they're going to benefit the most. They will.
I think small businesses who need some avenue to banking are going
small
to greatly benefit from
with Safe Banking Plus. Yes, not Safe Banking Minus, Jason.
Oh God, here we go. Here we go with the semantics again.
Is regular Safe Banking still even an option? It's now moved on to Plus.
It is Safe Banking Plus currently. It is currently Safe Banking
We've dumped
Plus.
the Minus,
and I'll wait to see. I'll wait to see the final in its finality where what actually is presented to us to see if how much they adhered to the Safe Banking Plus provisions.
But time will tell. But I'll tell you what.
Time will tell, but I would not be surprised if they pull the good old bait and switch and they're going to give the original Safe Banking in there, and then all the carpetbaggers are going to rejoice.
I find it astonishing, simply astonishing, that the Democrats have held the House and the Senate for this whole 2 years, and the only thing cannabis related that's getting done is going to be done in the lame duck session when there's no electoral consequences and no balls on the walls.
I agree.
No balls on the walls.
Exactly.
I love that.
Who wipes down the loads?
Who's wiping off the walls?
I definitely love it more than anything, though, when we get to catch politicians on video when they're having like conversations about shit that they have no idea about. And like, because we're so aware of cannabis, we get to look at them. And, you know, if in other industries, other people get to look at the politicians. Like the lumber industry looks at some politicians and be like, you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. And constantly. Like, I like being able to really have that opinion, because I've never been super strong in like understanding all of the deep roots of politics except for cannabis. And so I like being able to watch it and be like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, because then I can actually know that, right? Like you kind of see a lot of politicians, you're like, I don't think they know what they're talking about, but I don't know enough about it to be like, no, that guy's an idiot. I know enough about this to be like, God, I wish he knew more in this fucking interaction. Just like you said, Gretchen.
Well,
it's,
it's probably an indicator that they don't know shit about shit. They just say a bunch of stuff confidently.
And that's important. It's so important, Nicole, for you to call these guys out. I'm going to request a YouTube short series, produced by 3S4, where Nicole gets to pick a clip of some windbag trying to win some votes and say some words, and just have Nicole slice and dice, because we need to know these things, because it's very confusing to the people who aren't so deeply embedded in the industry as you guys are, and we're the ones who are voting. There are more of us voting than there are of you guys voting who actually know what's going on. So the way into that audience is for you to get these dudes.
I love that we have people like Gretchen and Jason too that are like in it, and they get to like actually they get treated like normal ass people to the politicians, which I'm like really
that's
impressed
because,
with.
we are normal ass people.
Yeah, but
it's what we do.
I know.
We know how to the cops.
I feel like politicians. I kind of feel like politicians are like cops-ish when I talk to them. When I talk to them, I'm like, am I allowed to say like? Anyways, let's go ahead and hop to our next course.
Coming up next, she's a cannabis storyteller and advocate from the. No, am I wrong?
Yeah, you're wrong.
No way.
You're wrong. We switched up the order.
Oh,
sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
Strong. Got it going on. Jason.
Sorry, I'm skipping.
My bad.
I'm skipping
Go ahead.
Up next, we've got Ed Schwartz. Ed is our resident tech guy and the voice of High at 9. Ed's a regulated cannabis industry veteran with 13 years of experience across all verticals. He currently works for Blaze as the product manager overseeing their retail software products and is one of my best friends. Ed, what do you have for us today?
I thank you Nicole for the great intro. I'm actually really excited to talk about some cool cannabis science and tech stuff today. And I actually have an article coming from Cannabis Science and Technology. Great website if you guys haven't checked them out. But they actually dropped an article a few days ago talking about something that we finally are getting here in the cannabis industry, and we've been waiting for a long time. Their article comes today with the headline of "An International Cannabis Community Debuts 4 New Standards for Cannabis Testing." So, in a recent announcement by ASTM International, which is, I think, one of the most oxymoronic names of all time, it's the ASTM International. And for those who don't know what the ASTM is the American Society of Tests and Measures. So, the American Society of Tests and Measures International, going after that in a wonderfully capitalistic way. Their cannabis committee, called the ASTM Committee D37 on Cannabis, approved 4 new standards to benefit workers in the cannabis industry, as well as regulators and consumers. Laboratories, producers, manufacturers, cultivators, extractors, and researchers are also expected to benefit from one or more of the standards as well. The 4 new standards from the Committee D37 are as follows. The first standard, called D8375, will provide a method to establish cannabinoid content in cannabis and hemp samples. This standard will help with proper labeling of products and may be also used in forensics laboratories for analysis of illegal samples to confirm cannabinoid content and to support further cannabinoid research, according to ASTM International member Garnet McRae. A second standard, D8399, will help laboratories in analyzing cannabis and hemp samples to establish pesticide concentration levels to ensure products meet regulatory requirements within appropriate jurisdictions. McRae noted that this will also help to address health and safety concerns as well as labeling and regulatory requirements for consumable cannabis products. The third standard, D8442, will provide a method to test for terpenes and cannabinoids using GC or gas chromatography. Grass chromatography. There's a Freudian slip there for you. According to the ASTM International member Randall Shearer, this standard will assist in quality control for cannabis and ensure safety and consistency of cannabis and hemp products. And the final standard, D8469, provides a method through inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry, or ICP-MS, which is that's some hot shit in the testing world. That will be used for detecting dangerous metals such as arsenic, cadmium, mercury, and lead in cannabis. The ASTM Cannabis Committee is planning a full interlaboratory study of that standard later in 2022. As stated in their news posting, the ASTM is a non-for-profit non-governmental organization, that develops voluntary consensus standards. They reportedly defer to appropriate government authorities to determine the legal and regulatory framework regarding the control and use of cannabis. And also, according to that, just to give you a little bit more background, Committee D37 was actually formed in 2017, and they're focusing purely just on developing voluntary consensus and supplementary programs on proficiency, testing, training, and certification. They do have some subcommittees focusing on the development of testing methods, practices, and guides for cultivation, quality assurance, laboratory considerations, industrial hemp devices for that vape gate, packaging, and security. That committee has 9 technical subcommittees to help develop and maintain standards, and has over 900 members from 30 countries. So really excited to be able to bring you this news and share it with my friends today. I know that I brought my first batch of some BHO actually back in 2010 to Full Spectrum Laboratories in Denver, Colorado, one of the first commercial cannabis testing labs to ever hit the market. And after having some great discussions with Dr. Rob way back then and understanding how fucked up the testing world is and how much variability there is, I am personally extremely excited to see that there's actually some standards being dropped so that we can get some continuity in testing methodology and get rid of this 20 to 40% variability that we've come to expect with testing results in the industry over time. My name is Ed Schwartz, and I'm reporting here on behalf of High at 9, bringing you the great news in cannabis moving forward.
Woo, 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 woo. I'm super excited about this, Ed.
Like
this is actually fucking amazing.
Who's actually going to adopt these rules and regulations, Ed?
Governments do. Governments do.
I know
governments are
going to,
but
no government has said that they're going to yet.
They
but
will.
it's very simple. They're going to change it with just a regulatory session and say for testing laboratories, they're going to say, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of states who've actually already tried to enforce these standards. California's tried to enforce them. Colorado's tried to enforce them. I remember Connecticut was trying.
We already use ASTM in all of our regulations under every single cannabis regulation in the state of California or in the United States has ASTM for packaging regulations as their back end for the testing for packaging requirements.
Well, and when you look at what
we're
the
already
FDA,
using it.
When you look at what the FDA does, they actually use in what so there's a thing you can do in with the FDA called a GRAS submission, or a generally recognized as safe submission, and a lot of GRAS rules and the way that framework works comes from ASTM and ISO standards. So the fact that we've actually got this coming through is just,
they call it GRAS standards too. People will just talk about it like that. So if you hear somebody say GRAS standards, they don't mean weed or grass, they mean the generally recognized as safe. But the United States uses a few companies like this in regular, across the board: UL, ETL, and ASTM. Okay, so if you have an electronic in any government regulated, it's usually UL or ETL listed. Those mean that they've gone through the private standardization of the testing that the government has required in order for you to meet code. So that same regulation kind of idea exists in the way of ASTM in regards to testing things to make sure that they meet code. And so ASTM is the most used across the nation, and internationally it's used a lot too. But as far as ways for the government just to easily say, oh, just use those standards because they're already there already. And so right now we don't have them. And I would say it would be as soon as the ASTM turns them on and says, yes, we're proficient in this, I'd say it'd be almost overnight that states would start to adopt them.
And one thing I want to clarify on this real quick, that when we use the term standard when it comes to laboratory testing, there's standard for the testing methodology, and then there's the standard, or what is more correctly known as a reference sample. And so those are two big issues that have to be solved here. We've solved the first one finally with this ASTM, these standards that they've created. Now we just need to get states to adopt and enforce the usage of those standards. But there's still the other side to be solved, which is reference sample standards for laboratories to use when calibrating and testing their machine and using to test their machines. And there's so much variability. Back in 2011, when I was actually looking deep into this, there were 17 different companies in the world making a THC standard. And I knew a laboratory in Colorado that was using 4 of them. And when you ran all 4 of these on a machine that had not been recalibrated in between runs, you'd have anywhere of an assayment between 60% THC and 110% THC. So there's still some work to do there, but this is one of the big pieces.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it, but I can't see too many of our conservative friends getting on board with that because it's
Rico Lamitte again.
That's ridiculous, Rico.
Incorrect.
Totally ridiculous.
Number one,
yes.
I do work with ASTM, and I also work with another group Nicole didn't mention, USP, which looks at medicines and food. As well. ASTM really kind of focuses on the chemistry side of things. And both of these groups have been working in tandem together on cannabis. And if you look at it, USP actually has a cannabis monograph out right now that they are looking for comment from different folks to put out in their compendium, their international compendium. They can't do it in their traditional reference materials for the US because it's federally illegal. But the fact that they have done this for the international side and that it's coming is really a big deal. And truly, like Ed says, these are the people who work with the FDA, ASTM, USP, a bunch of these folks, because frankly, the FDA doesn't have the resources to do what these people do. And these people create the standards, they create the methodology, and really FDA is kind of the enforcer. That's how it works.
Get them,
a deschedule or a bus.
Yes. Coming up next, she's a cannabis storyteller, an advocate from the Lone Star State. She is also the co-founder of Grow House Media, and you can find her weekly on her podcast, Feminized, where she interviews the dopest women in cannabis. You can find her on YouTube, but also you can also find her right here at High at 9 News, because it is none other than the Liz Grow.
Oh, yeah. And I know what tar sounds like because I'm reporting live from deep in the heart of Texas. Guys, I'm excited to be here today, taking Mandy Tingler's place. And this morning, she gave me the greatest story to share. So I'm excited. Okay, and I want you guys to bring out your notebooks and your pens and take notes, okay, because this is a good one. It's New York Dispensary Guidelines Say No to MSOs. And this story comes from Deborah Borchardt, who's also on the Feminized podcast, and she is the publisher of the Green Market Report. And this story talks about the new program that cuts MSOs out of the retail program in New York, among other things. So late Friday afternoon, New York's Office of Cannabis Management released a 27-page set of guidelines for adult use dispensaries. This includes rules around MSOs, product, location, and discounts. While not the final regulations, it seems that OCM realizes that it was about to award licenses to the first applicants who had no idea how to be in compliance with a program with no rules or regulations. So many of the guidelines mirror those in other markets, including prohibition on many images that would be attractive to people under the age of 21. This includes cartoons, bubble type or other cartoon-like font, and bright colors that are neon in appearance, which doesn't bode very well for the cookies logo, I'd say. In addition, the guidelines can restrict any imitation of food, candy, soda, drinks, cookies, or cereal in labeling, packaging, advertising, or marketing, and there are a few exceptions to this. And this could incredibly affect the infused chocolate bar market with cookies and cream flavors and birthday cake sprinkles and all of those things. So I'm going to go down and talk a little bit about some of the guidelines that have been suggested to be put in place. Let's talk about no MSOs. So at the very end of the guidelines, the OCM notes that all retail licenses cannot have any interest in any business outside or anywhere that cultivates, processes, or distributes cannabis. So licensees cannot have any interest in any business anywhere that cultivates, processes, or distributes cannabis. Okay, so let that sink in. So most MSOs, grow massive amounts of weed, their own cannabis, for other stores and, sell them to other dispensaries. So they grow it for their own stores and then they sell it to other dispensaries. So effectively banning them from obtaining a retail license in New York is kind of a big deal, and that's what these regulations propose to do. This also calls into question the companies that currently have medical cannabis operations in New York. For example, Etain grows its own medical cannabis and also sells that product to other medical dispensaries. So you guys can see the problems there. The guidelines go on to say that applicants with an interest in such businesses, no matter how small that interest is, will not be approved. A licensee who themselves or through their true parties of interest, passive investors, or any management providers holds a prohibitive interest, risking their license being canceled, suspended, revoked, or other enforcement actions being taken. That's big time. For MSOs like Green Thumb Industries that have already invested thousands of dollars to build cultivation sites to supply its Rise dispensaries, oh well. All right, regulation around product. And it's also unclear how cultivators and producers can demonstrate their products to distributors or retailers. The guidelines are giving something of value. The guidelines ban giving something of value to retail dispensaries to induce that dispensary to buy something from the cultivator, processor, or distributor. That includes free product, so no sampling, except as permitted in regulations and guidelines. Licensees are also prohibited from representing their businesses as producing or selling organic or craft products until such a definition is authorized by the OMC. Man, this is kind of big time, right? So other elements, though, include this. Dispensaries can be open until midnights. Retailers must have a brick and mortar store, so no ghost dispensaries. Physical stores may have a drive-through window. Deliveries allowed. Standard security systems must be in place to prevent theft, and retailers are restricted to 2 signs outside of the dispensaries. Owners must also own their own vehicles to transport cannabis products and maintain a manifest record. That has to go to the OCM before it goes to the distributor or the dispensary. Locations, all right, they must be approved by the OCM and they must comply with any local zoning ordinances, of course. So that's a big deal. it's, and then merch. Okay. I'm just going to touch on this one and then we got to talk about it, but merch of any kind, they're effectively banning, brands from merch. From dispensaries can only sell merch. You can't give merch if you're a cannabis brand to a dispensary. And as a dispensary, you can't give a discount either. So guys, we don't have any dispensaries here in Texas. So I'm excited to talk to you guys who, have a better feel for the market and talk to us about a little bit of the pains that New York is going to be feeling.
So I was just out in New York. Nicole, was it last week or the week before? I'm forgetting now. It's all smashing together. And I gotta say, like, after spending a lot of time talking to the boots on the ground and a lot of these folks who are going to be the big players in that industry out there, I just wanted to take a second to shout out the OCM for doing a damn good job protecting the little guy and giving them a chance to not only survive but truly thrive.
I disagree with that, though. I think that they're going to take over from the government side, and they're keeping the big guy out from.
You think
being a competitor?
These are all only suggestions. These are only suggestions. This is nothing that's official.
This is only suggestions.
These are suggestions, but they are going to be the framework on which they build their regulations. Now, real quick, I do want to correct you on one thing, Liz. There are 3 dispensaries in Texas. I helped open 2 of them.
Hey, well, no, there are. There absolutely are. We got to shout them out. Good blend in Texas. OG Compassionate. Absolutely are dispensaries, but. We're 30 million people, and there are only 3 dispensaries.
I'm willing to bet.
I'm willing to bet for every one
that their block on MSOs will be challenged and will be overridden and be seen as illegal.
It's technically not a block on MSOs at the end of the day. So you can still have MSOs. They just have to specialize in either production or retailing. There can't be any crossover. So like GTI could continue to exist as Just Rise dispensaries, but they would literally have to drop 100% of their production-based assets and across the entire world.
Hold on. So Ed, let me ask this question, because prior New York was saying that everyone with a medical license was going to turn into an adult use license, and they were going to be the only vertically integrated company. So you're telling me that this is enacted, that all of that shifts.
We'll see what happens in that regard, but based on what this documentation says, it doesn't.
Because it's very contradictory.
It doesn't exclude. This documentation does not exclude MSOs in the sense of like you can't have operations in multiple states. It just is excluding vertical integration, which, as Liz so aptly put it, pretty much all MSOs are vertically integrated, at least in one state, because a lot of them are in Florida. And guess what? You're required to be vertically integrated in a lot of these states like Florida.
Well, what a great show. Thank you guys all for that entertainment and amazing amount of education and information. Thank you guys all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Thank you to the haters for still talking about us, and a huge thank you to True Classic and LAXCC for helping us keep the lights on. Thank you to the correspondents for being amazing, and Cannabis for giving us a reason to do this, and 3 is 4 for helping us create a space in this cannabis miniverse. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us.
You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nicole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.